Hello, everybody, and happy Monday to you. Welcome to the Witty Writers Show. Now, I have a very special guest with me today, and that is Asha Dahya. Hello, Asha.
Hi, Beth. So lovely to meet you and be chatting with you today.
I've been so excited, Asha, because you're my kind of lady. I have to
I love that.
Oh my gosh. I mean, there are some women who are quite content, you know, doing whatever jobs they do and raising their families and everything else, which I truly admire, because just raising kids is a full-time job.
Yeah.
As you know, because you're a mum. But my gosh, you wear so many different hats. It's unbelievable. Now you are the author of today's Wonder Women.
Yes. Shall I hold it up so you can see? This is my,
I
call that my third baby. Today's Wonder Women, everyday superheroes who are changing the world.
That is just fantastic. And we're going to go in depth into your book because it is amazing. You're also a TEDx speaker, a journalist. You are the founder and chief editor of girltalkhq.com, which I've got the link under the video, and everybody can check it out. You're a massive supporter of women's rights. Yes. And you've also produced content for Fox, ABC, MSN, MTV. You just blow my mind. You are a Wonder Woman. And you're raising a family. I'm like, this woman rocks. She's awesome.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for that lovely introduction and for that pump up. I love it. It's so hard when I have two toddlers. One is almost two, one is almost 4. So I feel like I'm in the thick of parenthood, in a pandemic. I released my book right as the pandemic hit. So everything was going on all at once, probably all at the wrong time. So it's nice to kind of take a step back and be speaking to someone as badass as you, and just to kind of have a chat about, you know, the creative side of my life. So thank you for this opportunity.
Oh, you are so welcome. I have the biggest admiration for you. I really do. I think it's important sometimes as women and dads as well, because there are a lot of single dads out there raising families on their own. I think it's very important as a parent to reflect on what we've achieved, not just focus on what we haven't done yet. And I think that's super important, because otherwise I think you can get very disengaged and disheartened if you only focus on what you haven't achieved yet. And that's the thing, it's yet. I haven't achieved that yet. I'll get there.
Yeah.
But actually reflecting on what we've actually already achieved, especially during the pandemic. I mean, that's amazing. I mean, you're raising 2 toddlers, you've published a book, you literally work all the time. That in itself is a major achievement, Asha.
It's hard. I mean, you know, you're a parent, and for any other parents out there, I mean, you get it. It's tough. I mean, look, it's been tough for a lot of people, everyone during the pandemic. I will say that. But I think for myself, I can only speak for myself, and, you know, juggling the young kids and the creative endeavors. And my husband's a freelance photographer, so he's been traveling a fair bit, only just started recently doing that again since COVID started. So it's definitely juggling a lot. So it's great to have those moments, like you said, where I can reflect and go, you know what, just the fact that I have these 2 amazing, healthy kids who love life, and I know I'm doing a great job with them. And, you know, the book launch didn't go as I planned, but I managed to write a book, and I still managed to put it out there, and I still get to have these conversations. It's not a time-sensitive book in that regard. I can still talk about these stories and the whole process whenever I want. And so, yeah, that's the real beauty in it, being grateful and reflecting and knowing you can use that for ongoing conversations, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And having toddlers, it's like having Tasmanian devils in the house.
Oh my gosh. Yes. And I'm from Australia, so I know exactly what that means. And one of them is at daycare right now. One of them, I hope you can't hear her behind me, because she refuses to nap. I put pillows at that door there behind me. So I'm trying to block the sound, basically.
She'll give in. Don't worry about it. She'll give in. I had 4, and the first 3 were literally just over a year in between. And I swear to God, I did not sleep for like 5 years.
Oh my gosh.
Literally, I could be talking to somebody and the next minute I'd be nodding off because I was just that exhausted.
And it does affect your mental health, not having sleep. It's like you really need that support. We realize how much we as parents and moms especially need that support because, it's tough not sleeping for so many years.
I know, right? I think we put too much pressure on ourselves, especially if you're, used to doing everything. Sometimes the housework can wait, and to just give up and just snuggle up with a baby and just get some sleep. Yeah,
live in that moment and just be like, this isn't going to last forever. One day they're going to be out of the house and you're going to wish you were back in that stage. And people tell me that all the time, so I'm really trying to put that into practice. Right now,
it's easier said than done, though. Because I'm like you. I'm not thinking, okay, I've got that to do, and I want to get that done. And that
whole nap when the baby naps. Oh yeah, great. That's a great piece of advice. Didn't apply to me ever. Those 20 minutes or half an hour or 1 hour. It's like I can do all the things, and precious of the time that I get to myself.
I know. I've got to tell you, you're a wonderful mother, but I do not miss those days.
I know. I feel you.
Oh my gosh. Although they're super cute at that age, I must admit. We've got some people popping up and saying hello, and lots of people watching. So do say hello to Asha because she's fabulous. James says, good afternoon, ladies.
Good afternoon. Yes, it is the afternoon. I don't know what time it is.
It is. All these time zones, I can't keep up, Asha. Honestly, I get so confused on a regular basis. We've got Marie as well. She says hiya. And we've also got Marcy. She says hello, Beth and Asha. Marcy, do you know what? She is your kind of lady. She's actually got a new book coming out in November. Her first one was all about the adoption process and how it affected her. And honestly, you can look into that because her book was very inspirational and affects many women. And on both sides of the adoption process. So it's fascinating.
I would love to read that. Yes.
It is brilliant. We've also got Josephine. She says, hello, ladies. Hope you're both doing good.
And you as well.
She's fabulous. She's actually in the UK. Marie says, mine should have they're still hanging around. I know the feeling, Marie. I've still got 2 of the rascals at home myself.
But they can vacuum after themselves, so that's a plus, right? Do they vacuum? Maybe that's the question.
I am not going to dishearten you and tell you that. As they get older, they tend to walk through rooms and things just drop off and fall off them as they walk through.
What on earth?
You need to instill it now as they're young.
I'm just forever picking up Legos and blocks. Like, come on, dude, learn this at daycare.
See, you're looking at it all wrong. You've got to turn it into a game. You need a target on the toy box that they got aim for. So it's actually fun. It's fun putting their stuff away. I also, little tip as well for everyone, I used to recycle the toys. So they would only play with like half or a quarter of their toys.
Yeah, we've been doing that.
And I switch it because otherwise you can literally give them a room full of toys and they go, I don't know what to play with.
Or they get bored. It's like, you've got endless amount of toys. You hit the jackpot with me as a parent. Like, come on, you've got everything you want. I was thinking about the other day, when you grow up and you have everything given to you, and I've definitely been very privileged growing up in the UK and in Australia. But then I've throughout my life, I'm a storyteller by heart, and when I read other people's stories of coming from very underprivileged backgrounds or coming from nothing, and it's almost like they had nothing to lose and everything to gain, and when your back's against the wall, it really shows what you're made of. And or women like the women in my book who have been put in a very difficult situation. It's like, okay, I can either do this or that. I can either, get up and rise and meet the occasion head on, or I can just kind of falter under the circumstances. And that is very inspiring to me to see how often difficult circumstances can really test you as an adult, as a person. And it's like that quote, women are like tea bags. You don't know how strong they are until you put them in hot water. I love that saying because it's so true. It's very true. Of all people, but as a woman, I definitely relate to that a lot.
Do you know what? I couldn't agree with you more. I'm very lucky because I had the strongest woman as a mother. I mean, my mum is my hero. She is amazing.
Awesome.
And she was on her own for a long time. She came out of a terrible relationship when I was young, which, affected her for the rest of her life, negatively, but mainly positively, because it made her super strong. Where she wouldn't take crap from no one anymore, and it made her defend us children, to the hill. I mean, she was fierce. But you're right, at times of difficulty is when we really can find our inner strengths and come out of situations that we never thought was possible. And I love the fact that you have told women's stories of how, they've come about terrible things that have happened in their lives, of different varieties, and they found that inner strength and have just turned it around completely. It just blows my mind. I'm just going to quickly pop a few more comments on here.
Okay.
And then I want to really talk in depth about your book, because it is absolutely amazing. We've got, my mum has joined us. Hello, Mum. I love you.
Hi, Lamb.
She's my biggest fan. Look, and I've just been praising you up. How funny is that? You deserve it, Mum. You deserve it. We've also got Scott has joined us. He says he's enjoying these conversations.
Hi, Scott.
Thank you, Scott. We're glad you're enjoying it. Peggy has joined us as well. Marie says tea bags.
Yes, me too. I love a good, strong Tetley tea bag every morning without fail.
See, this is why I knew we would get on so well. I knew it. Peggy says, good for your mum. Thank you, darling. She's still a badass even now. Wendy's joined us, says, hello, ladies.
Hi, Wendy.
And also Heather, she says, hello to you both. Heather's got a fantastic book club, and it's amazing. I think we should try and vote your book on there, actually, Asha, because it's
please do.
That would be brilliant. Marie says, don't mess with mums.
That's right.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Josephine says, Thai food is my tipple, LOL.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's a good tea too. We can't get that here. Oh, I haven't found it here in Los Angeles, so any links would be great.
You need to do what I do, Asha. Whenever anybody says, I'd love to come out and visit, I go, yes. Love to have you. Here's a shopping list.
Here's a list. I want my chocolate-covered McVitties. I want my hula hoop crisps.
Marmite, Twiglets.
Oh, I'm a Vegemite girl. Sorry, that's my Australian side coming out.
Oh, I'll forgive you on that one. What's the other thing? Custard powder and gravy granules we can't get here either.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, we send them a list, but we do spoil them rotten once they get here. So that's good.
Yeah.
James says, glad I'm not the only guy here. Of course not. There are actually more than you realise, James, but they're not as vocal as the ladies. I've got to tell you. We've got the Witty Writers Show has got many, 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 many secrets.
Yeah, you have a lot of male guests too.
Yeah, we do. We actually do. Rochelle has joined us. She says hi from Scotland.
Hi, Rochelle.
And and Josephine says, woohoo, I have hula hoops in my cupboard right now.
Oh, I'm so jealous.
She has to rub it in. That you're evil, Josephine. That is just downright evil. I mean, you've been on an absolutely amazing journey, Asha, and I want to go right back to where it all started for you, because everybody's journey is so different, and different things inspire different people. Now, what came first? Was it actually the feeling that you wanted to try and change things, or did you actually start producing all the content for the networks and then decide I want to really change something? How did it all happen?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I definitely didn't grow up thinking I want to change the world. But I was born in England, in Birmingham. Shout out. Although I don't know if is it that exciting of a place. I haven't been in a long time. So
listen, the UK is just awesome. So you can shout out as much.
I do love the UK. Yeah. Shout out to all my Brummy family that still live there and in various parts of the UK. Moved to Australia when I was 8. My dad, wanted to have more opportunities for us kids, and with his job as well. So I did a lot of my growing up in Australia, school, university, starting my media career. I think deep down I always wanted to work in media. Maybe when I was a kid, I probably had these, fantastic ideas that, I want to be on TV, I want to be famous, and I want to be an actress. I tried acting. I was horrible at it. But what I did realize through various school programs and university things and doing extracurricular sort of extra jobs and auditioning for various things while I was in college, I was great at talking on camera. I love talking. I love being myself. I love talking to people. So some of my agents and friends at the time were like, why don't you try presenting or hosting? And I thought, oh, that's an interesting idea. All right, let's give it a go. So in my last year of university, I auditioned for this national kids show in Australia to be one of the presenters on it, and I got the job. So I was like, all right, well, I guess this is a sign. This is meant to be. And so I did that for a number of years and started working for big networks in Sydney, MTV, Disney, got to travel around the world, around Australia. It was amazing.
Wow.
Tried to do some music and other different creative things. And then I thought, okay, I need to kind of expand my opportunities because Australia is a very small market compared to the rest of the world, although now everything is a lot more global. But and also as a woman of color in Australia, although it's very multicultural, when you look at some of the main broadcast channels, this is, about 10, 15 years ago, the opportunities for me were still very limited. Now it's kind of changing. So I thought I'm either going to go to the UK or America. I ended up going to LA. I was 24 at the time, about to turn 25. And I thought, right, let's just get an agent. Let's just start getting into TV, doing auditions. I landed a job hosting a major national show on Nickelodeon, a kids game show, I think 4 months after I landed. And this was 2008.
Wow.
And what happened later in the year in 2008, the entire economy crashed of the world, the economy crashed. So it was great timing, but it was also bad timing. So that my career then kind of took an immediate halt in entertainment. At the same time, I also come from a very religious background. I'm not so religious now, but I come from a very conservative evangelical background. It's a little bit different in Australia, but here in the US, as you know, Beth, it's very politicized and can be very divisive in a lot of ways. So I started going to this church and I met my first husband there. And as my career kind of came to a halt, one of the things to do in church is to get married very young. And there's a lot of reasons why. The main one is, they preach no sex before marriage. So a lot of people get young just so they can have sex. And it's really damaging. That's a whole other issue. But anyway, I got married at 24 for the first time. It ended up being a very, very horrible situation, very abusive, very toxic, not just in the marriage, but in the church that I was in at large. Like that was not great at all. So 4 years later, I made the decision to leave. And it was very, very difficult. Thank God we didn't have kids. Thank God we didn't have a lot of, financial assets. Let me use my computer. But as a result of leaving that 5,000 member church here in Los Angeles, it was a very conservative church. I immediately lost my community, my friends, and I was very, very involved in this church. I was singing on the worship team. I was leading Bible study. I was involved in women's ministries and youth ministries. Like I was involved because my career was kind of, on the back burner at that point. Things were changing in America. It was a very, difficult time for me personally. So when I left that marriage and decided to leave that church as well, all of a sudden my community was gone. And all the people that I thought were my friends, the hardest thing was that no one reached out to me, especially the women. That I think hurt me the most because I was involved in so many things. So I was, 29 by this age, and I was starting to get back into production, working behind the scenes. I was a producer and coordinator on America's Next Top Model for 5 seasons. And that was great. I had a lot of experience working on that show. Got to work with Tyra Banks, a bunch of different celebrities. Went around the world, traveled around the world with that show. So my career was like kind of starting in a different direction. And at the same time in my personal life, one of the things I realized was missing was that strong connection and that community with women in my life that I wanted to come alongside me and be like, I've gone through this. Here's how I can help you. Or, how can I help you? Like, what do you need? And I felt I didn't have any of that, even though in the church that I was part of, that was preached a lot. But when push came to shove, the minute I kind of stepped back, it was, no, you're on the outside now. You're not one of us. And that was really, really hard. And so I started this blog, back in 2012, 2013, while I was going through this divorce. away from my parents who were in Australia. And I started this blog on Tumblr called Girl Talk HQ. I thought, I just want to talk to other women. I want to hear other stories of other women and girls who've been through crap and who have dealt with it and want to share their experience as well. And that ended up morphing into girltalkhq.com, what it is today. And I really value it as a platform where, you know, other women and girls can share their story. We have had a few men write blogs and articles as well, which is great. And just, you know, I have that digital kind of community because that's my background in media. And then I, you know, at the same time started working more and more in TV. Ended up meeting my now husband, my second husband, and of course had 2 kids with him. But along the way, it really made me realize one of the things that I want to use my personal experience and my professional experience for is to really amplify the voices of women and people who have been either marginalized, silenced, underrepresented in a way where they can share their story. Because the more that we share our personal experiences as everyday people, I think the less lonely we feel, the less alone it feels in the world. And so that's really important to me. And the book obviously morphed from the blog, which we can talk about in a bit, but it really made me value, you know, people's voices and stories because I got a lot out of it. So that in a nutshell is where I come from and how I got to where I am today and why I'm so passionate. And one thing I also will add, speaking of moms, growing up, because my parents were Indian immigrants, you know, there were a lot of Indian immigrants who moved over to the UK in the 60s, and it was a very volatile time. And one of the things that my mom and her peers really valued was that community of other Indians and other women in their life to support each other. And so growing up, I would hear my mom talk about these stories of amazing Indian women who'd risen above. We would watch these Indian art house films about incredible women who were like battling the odds and gender inequality and all this stuff. So that was kind of going on in the highlight reel in the back of my mind growing up. And that really had an impact on me, you know, obviously later in life in my 30s. And I realized that she planted the seed for me to really be a champion for women's voices just in her everyday, ordinary way. And so I'm really thankful to her for that because, you know, moms really do have a huge impact on their children. So
really
yeah,
do.
that's me.
Oh, sorry. My voice is coming through super strong there for a second. I'll turn that down a little bit. It's amazing, isn't it? But your parents do shape you, especially of the same sex. So, you know, as little girls, we follow our mother's lead. And we, you know, we watch that without even realizing it, we're watching their behavior. We watch how they respond to different situations, and it shapes us. And it can either make us very much the same or determined not to go through the same thing and not behave the same way. And it can either go one way or the other. And that is key, I think. And I think you did I mean, obviously you did the right thing coming out of such an awful relationship, because otherwise, you know, your future children would have seen the way your husband was treating you and seeing you, how you was reacting to that. And they learn from that. And I think too many people who are in bad relationships don't realize the effect it has on the children, because they're learning all these social cues of what a woman is willing to put up with.
And how she values herself. You know, I think it says a lot about, do you value yourself enough to get out of this situation? Granted, it's not as easy as just getting up and leaving, but just that thought of, I am worth more than this toxic situation. What is the first step from here? You know, I think that's and it's very important to realize, I think, because a lot of people, you know, a lot of people make the mistake of only thinking about how things affect women or little girls. But it's just as important to realize how it affects men and little boys. Absolutely. Teach them how to treat women or how to not treat them. And, you know, and how to deal with emotions. I think that's a key thing. There are so many men that go through quiet depression. They don't let on. They don't tell anybody how they're feeling, but they've got this depression that builds and builds and builds because they've been taught from such a young age, you're not allowed to cry. You're not allowed like a girl, man up, you know, grow some balls. Like it's super unhealthy.
No, there's not, and there's such a double standard, and I mean, you saw that when you know when you had the sense and the confidence to come out of that marriage. You know, you were basically cast away just because you had the strength and the gumption to come out of a terrible relationship. I mean, as you said, the women and the church community should have rallied around you to see if you was all right and if you needed anything, if you needed some support. You know, but I think one of the things I've noticed is, and I don't mean to be disrespectful to anybody here, but there are too many people who straight away assume if a relationship goes wrong, oh, well, the woman's got to have found somebody else. Why is that people's first thought? I do not understand that. Even if that was true, there must have been a reason.
There's always a reason.
Yeah. There was obviously if that woman had been happy, she wouldn't have been interested in anybody else. But 9 times out of 10, they are not leaving for somebody else. They are leaving because the person they're with has made them bloody miserable and unhappy. And I think a lot of people come to the realization of, I would rather be on my own and happy than with somebody and bloody miserable.
Right.
It's a no-brainer, isn't it? So, you know, I'm very sorry that you had to go through that. However, I'm so glad that you've used all these experiences to go out there and highlight these issues for women and men. I mean, you do so much work for men and women, especially women. I think it's fantastic that you've used all this experience and knowledge and personal trauma, and you've built something from it in a positive and constructive way. I mean, that is just, I'm applauding you because that's just amazing, Asha.
Thank you. Well, I definitely see myself as an amplifier of other people's voices, because, you know, it really is about that community and that networking and finding your tribe. You know, like at the beginning you said, you're my kind of woman. It's like, yeah, we want to find people who we can rally behind and who they can support us. And you know, even if we're not exactly the same in everything, at least we know that we're all human. We go through things, and, you know, we can find ways to support each other and find that network that can support us. So I think that's super important. Yeah.
I honestly think as a society, we need to stop being so judgmental of others and ourselves.
Yeah.
We need to stop trying to achieve unrealistic anything. I mean, down to looks, weight, you know what I mean? There's just too many social standards that people are putting themselves under.
They're just unrealistic, and they were just thought up by a bunch of people in a boardroom, like, hey,
for marketing,
let's decide that the perfect woman looks like this, and all of a sudden the entire planet is now following that trend. But thankfully, in recent years, we're becoming more aware of these, you know, unrealistic, unhealthy norms, quote unquote, that we're supposed to follow. And also with the pandemic, we've come to see very clearly that the systems that have been put into place, ones which do work, ones which do not, areas where we're sorely lacking, you know, especially when it comes to like healthcare and parental support and all these kind of important issues that affect so many people. And so, that's one of the great things about people having an opportunity to share their own voice, whether it's social media, like what we're doing now, or writing a book. The more that we are able to, you know, be empowered and to share our truth and to share our stories, it is going to make the world a better place. And granted, disclaimer, there is a lot of bad information out there too. That's just part and parcel of democratizing social media and, you know, platforms. But
yeah, 9 times out of 10, all these social standards are created by marketing teams to sell products. That's all it is. And I think that's what people don't realize. You know, when they say, oh, you know, this is what you should be eating.
Yeah.
Well, that's because like a year ago, they just got a government kickback on their product.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's all about marketing, manipulation, and money, and it's heartbreaking. We've got some more comments. Let's just have a look. Okay, let's have a look. Okay, Jane says he lost a good wife because of that kind of stupidity.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Jane.
So sorry, James. That is awful. That really is. My mother. My heart goes out to you. It really does. And he says even my mother asked me that. Oh, I tell you, it's a tough world. It really, really is. And Rochelle says amen to our positivity. I love that. I absolutely love it. Now, you must have been, when your blog was really taking off, you must have been blown away by people's true stories of what had happened to them, you know, how they came out of it and how they pushed forward in their lives. Are there 2 or 3 particular stories that are really close to heart that just blew your mind?
Yeah, and they went into this book, you know, when I was choosing with my publisher, okay, what's going to go into the book, how many stories, I was able to choose a lot from the blog and redo the interviews and expand on them, as well as find new interviews. But, you know, as the blog was growing, and it was a steady and slow growth, because I was working on it while I was doing other jobs, and it was always a side project for me. However, the content that was coming my way, that I was putting out there, and the stories that were coming my way, it would just make me realize, okay, I have to keep doing this, even though it's not the paycheck for me, but it is the passion for me. Because when I'd started out, a lot of my blogger friends who were, you know, in the fashion and lifestyle space, they would say to me, you know, you're going to get so many requests. People are going to flood your inbox, and 90% of the requests that come your way, you're going to say no to. I thought, okay, I'll keep that in mind. Honestly, it's the other way around for me. 90% of the requests that come my way, I say yes to. Only about 10%, or maybe even less, I end up, you know, discarding or saying no to. And to me, that's a true testament of the stories that I've been putting out there. They're attracting the right people. Even more people see, oh, that's a great site. That's a great story. I want to submit my story. Or I want to introduce my client to Girl Talk HQ. And that's just been going on and on. It's still going on today. I continually get emails of, hey, you should meet this woman. She's a CEO and she was a single mother. She, you know, endured this, that, and the other. I'm like, yes, how is this person not on every headline across the world? That she deserves more, you know, more media space. And so I love that. I love that I get to do that. As for some of the stories that really stood out to me, there have been a few. There's one woman who went into my book, and there's one woman who's in the book who wasn't on the blog originally, but a woman who I know personally. Her name's Gloria Felt. She's the founder of an organization called Take the Lead here in the US. She was also a former CEO of Planned Parenthood a few decades ago. She was a teen mother. She was basically told, you know, if you have a child as a teen, you're never really going to amount to anything. And I think the statistics for teen mothers in the US, the number of teen mothers who end up going on getting a bachelor's degree or undergraduate degree is less than 2%. And that doesn't say stuff about the teen mothers. It says a lot about the support systems that exist here in the country. And so she really, you know, hustled and struggled and did it. She got her degree. She ended up in the corporate world, worked her way up, became the CEO of Planned Parenthood, and now she's the CEO of a women in leadership company called Take the Lead, and who I've worked with personally. And she's just got some really valuable insight. She's a grandmother now, but one of the things, you know, I asked her, what was it like being the CEO of this organization that really champions reproductive rights and sexual health, and, you know, that has also become a very divisive political talking point in the US, and especially with what's going on in the US right now regarding abortion and reproductive rights. And she said to me, you know, one of the things that I would tell my team and that I would often talk about is, it's not about fighting back. Like, how do we find ways to fight forward? And I thought, wow, that's mind blowing. Like, you know, when we're in a situation where everything looks really crappy, everything's a struggle, it's going to be so difficult, you might as well give up. Like, how do we, instead of like fighting back and, you know, pushing back those forces, how do we find a new way forward to fight forward and then set the terms of what we're doing looks like? And that really inspired me, because it can relate to so many other things. And so I knew immediately when I had to, you know, make a list of the women that I wanted to include in this book, she was at the top of my list, because she's just, she's incredible. So Gloria Felt, look her up. Gloria Felt is spelled Feldt. She's amazing.
Do you know, you're right. It's stuff like that that is still so taboo to talk about. And I love the fact that you and other women are open and will discuss this in a pleasant way. I think too much of social media is very brave people behind a screen and a keyboard who think they can verbally abuse anybody that doesn't have the same opinion as they are. And I find that so sad. Because I tell you, Asha, nobody would dare speak to me badly in person.
Well, that's the thing. I think social media has empowered people to say nasty things.
But it's a total lack of respect. And I think everybody should have free speech as long as it's not literally attacking somebody, you know, for no reason. I think there has to be a set limit there of respect, just decent moral respect for people. But you're right, the Planned Parenthood has been, you know, so heavily been in the media and everything for such bad reasons and good reasons. And that's the issue. Women should have the choice because, you know, at the end of the day, having a baby is life-changing. It changes your life forever. Whether you keep the baby or you don't keep the baby, you have to live with that decision for the rest of your life. It changes your life. And once you do something, you can't turn back time and take it back. When it's done, it's done. It's life-changing. I think for me, what broke my heart was the fact that when you've got a facility or a company that gets so big and there's so many of them, you can't keep the same level of control. And the footage that was being shown on the media, etc., of, you know, young girls who were obviously in the sex trade and they were just being ushered in. Somebody was being paid a few bob, you know, because you can't trust everybody. There are always bad apples in every area. And I say that to my children. You can't judge a whole community of nurses just by the actions of a few bad apples.
Yeah, you got to do research and
exactly. You can't do that because at the end of the day, we are humans. We all have our faults. Whatever business area you find yourself in, there are always going to be a very tiny minority who give everyone else a bad name. So that's the issue, I think, because there was a few bad apples within, you know, Planned Parenthood. They tarnished all the good work that was being done for genuine women who needed help. On the other side of that, I think society as a whole, and you must have seen this over the years, Asha, I think there's a problem that social society has become desensitized to certain things. It's become too acceptable. So rather than more women take charge of their own birth control and go out of their way to make sure that they don't get pregnant because they don't want a baby, they come under boyfriend pressure. Oh, he doesn't want to wear one, so I let him not wear one. That's no excuse for getting pregnant. Do you know what I mean? I can understand it, but there needs to be better education for boys and women so that these teens grow up having the confidence, you know, to say, no, if you're not going to put something on the end of it, we're not doing anything. And also the boys grow up to realize it is their half of their responsibility to stop babies appearing if they don't want any. Do you know what I mean? So
I think there's definitely a lack of sex education and knowledge and information being shared about healthy, consensual relationships, what it means to have healthy communication and stand up for yourself. And you said that word confidence. I think that is definitely key. I think when you grow up in a society where women are taught by these marketing campaigns, you are not good enough, therefore you need to buy this product and, you know, wear this and eat that to be good enough. And if you don't do that, well, now take all those insecurities and put them, you know, in a relationship, you know, that just multiplies. And so, I think it really is a shame that across the United States, there is no one standard of sex education being taught. It's state by state. And I think there's only something like 23 states that mandate medically accurate sex education, comprehensive sex education. P.S. What are you teaching if it's not medically accurate? A lot of states push religiously formed abstinence-only education, which is
just don't do it. Well, who's that helping?
Well, and then, you know, like you said, there's two. It takes two to tango. There are, you know, two people involved in this act of, you know, getting someone pregnant. But when you look at society, the entire burden is placed on the woman's shoulders, whether it's legislation, whether it's shaming, whether it's religious sermons. It's all focused on the woman. Well, what are you going to do? How dare you do that? Oh, you did that, you know. But meanwhile, it is easier for a lot of the men to be able to just kind of be hands off, which is, you know, that needs to fundamentally change. And it all comes back to healthy communication and not being afraid to talk about things and not being afraid to use the word abortion and know that it is so common. You know, here in the United States, the majority of women who get abortions are already mothers. That's 60%. So you know, then it starts the conversation about, well, what are the support systems in place? What are the lack of support systems in place? Why are mothers having, you know, looking to this procedure? Does she have childcare? Does she have a health insurance? Is she able to feed the kids that she's got? Yeah, and if not, why are we pressuring her? You better have that baby at all costs, no matter what, you know. And then there's just so many. The thing about abortion for me is it's interconnected to every aspect of society, whether it's health insurance, whether it's your financial status, whether it's your education status. The zip code or the postcode that you live in determines the type of hospitals you have access to and the type of food you have access to. You know, there's so many things involved in this. And so, yeah, it's a very big issue that I'm really passionate about, I'm fascinated in, and definitely needs a lot of evolving. So it's not such a political or religious topic. And by the way, the majority of religious people in the United States, I'm sure it might be similar in the UK, a lot of religious people believe in the access to the full range of reproductive rights and healthcare services. So there needs to be a huge overhaul in this conversation that involves nuance and, you know, getting rid of the shaming and the judgment and you know, all these black and white polarized terms. We need to bring that nuance back into the conversation.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think the whole thing, as you said, is communication and education. I think those two things would make such an impactful difference. I'm so glad you wrote your book. I really do. I'd love for you to hold it up again so we can see it for the viewers who have only just tuned in. Look at that. Today's Wonder Woman. It's absolutely brilliant. And it's so amazing that you've given, you know, a voice to these women who have been through amazing journeys, because as you said, you know, there are so many things that could have been done better had these women had the support, the understanding, the lack, you know, the removal of the judgments that so many women get.
Yeah.
I'm really glad to say that things have progressed so much since I was young. I mean, I'm a lot older than you are. You know, when I was young, you know, it was on women should not get divorced. They should just grin and bear it and put up with that crap.
Yeah.
You know, they should not have access to any money. They should just be chained to the kitchen sink, popping out babies. They shouldn't be able to have careers. They should definitely not be able to divorce their abusive husbands. It was just not done. So the women who did come out of those relationships literally were in the same situation as you, Asha. They literally were treated like scum. Oh, divorcee. Oh my,
the outcast. God. And
the
rules.
They were treated so badly, and it was tough for them because when they went to go and register, you know, a lot of them would have to move away from the area. So when they would re-register their kids at the new school, the fact that they put Ms. instead of Mrs.
Stigma and judgment already.
Yeah, straight away, the women and the staff in the school would treat them differently and make them feel like scum. My mum had to deal with all of that, and that was awful for her. But do you know what? As I said, she's the strongest woman I know. And, you know, if I've got to tell you, because my mum is so fantastic. If I rang up my mum tomorrow, she's watching, by the way, say hello to me. Because I did pop her up earlier. Yeah, if I rang up my mum tomorrow and said, Mum, I'm leaving my husband, I am becoming a lesbian, my mum would say, as long as you're happy, dear, that's all that matters.
I love that.
Do you know what I mean? That's the sort of parents we should all have. And I've always been the same with my kids. I've always been so open and honest and told them the truth. But also, encourage them to research so they can make their own decisions, but research the right way to legitimate sites and places that I know they're going to get the factual information. Once they've got the facts, they can make their own judgment call. I mean, I've got, kids who are, sort of more conservative in their views, and then I've got kids that are more liberal in their views. But I've tried to encourage them to respect each other's views, no matter what they are, and discuss topics in a respectable manner. Because I think that is key. If you can't have, a decent debate with people in a respectful way, nothing changes. That's the only time you actually come to solutions and move forward.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, it's not everyone's job to debate, and that's okay as well. People, I will say that I'm one of those people that made a conscious decision. I'm not interested in debating people, and I'm not interested in having, back and forth arguments on social media. It's a waste of time.
I agree.
But I think once you look at someone beyond what their status is, what their political leanings are, what their religious faith is, and you see them face to face as a human being, I think that is where you can start as a point of common ground, that this is a person, they are making their way in the world. And that's not to say you have to like and be friends with everyone. That's just impossible. And there are people that are super toxic and you should cut out of your life. That's also very, very healthy.
I agree with that.
It's just a matter of, like you said, no one would dare say anything on social media who, when they say nasty things, they're not going to dare say it to my face. And that's, when you meet someone face to face, you realize everyone's got a story. Everyone's dealing with things. And 9 times out of 10, when people are horrible or nasty, when they're bullies, as we know, it's because of another issue that is going on in their life. And, so I think that's also really important to remember. That's something that I've learned a lot about, as I've gone on over the years and been using social media a lot. But one of the women that I really also want to highlight, if I can, from my book, that I would love people to know about, her name is Frady Rees. And, we're talking about these women who have dealt with these horrible situations and stigma and judgment. One of the common themes with the women in my book is that they've forged a new path forward that didn't exist. And I think that's really important too. It's not just a matter of getting out of a horrible situation, is how do you get out of that and create a new pathway for other, people who are struggling to come along with you as well. So this woman, Frady Rees, she was part of a very ultra-Orthodox religious community in New York, and she was a forced marriage survivor. She wasn't a child marriage, but she was a forced marriage survivor. She went through a very nasty divorce, had 2 daughters, has 2 daughters, but that made it even more complicated. She ended up leaving the marriage. The custody battle was nasty. But along the way, going through that experience, she decided to form an organization that would fight forced and child marriage in the United States. And when I started reading her story, I was like, oh, this is interesting. What's the child marriage? We hear a lot about child marriage around the world. And, we think, oh, yeah, it's that problem out there. But actually, it's very, very common in the United States. Between 2000 and 2010, over a quarter of a million child marriages were recorded across the country. That's state records. And as of right now, there are only 6 states which completely outlaw child marriage, no exceptions. New York just became the 6th state last week. And Frady's organization is called Unchained at Last. Her organization has been championing this for years and years and years, and now they're starting to get momentum where they're meeting with legislators in different states, and they're putting pressure on, governors and senators and assembly members, and they're saying, hey, your state, even though you claim to be progressive and you champion women and girls and children, by the way, there are X number of loopholes in your laws that allow for child marriages, and here are the number of child marriages that are happening in your state right now. And so sadly, there are some states that refuse to get rid of those loopholes, and so they allow for child marriages. And one of the most common things is teen girls becoming pregnant. They're forced into marriage. And when you're underage, you have no rights. You can't hire an attorney. You can't go to most domestic violence shelters because they're liable and they could be accused of kidnapping by parents. And so fighting an issue like child marriage is so, so big and so, so scary, but she's doing it. And because of her own situation and her own experience, and now helping so many other forced and child marriage survivors who are now sharing their story publicly, they go around the country and they do these protests called chain-ins, where they dress up as brides and they put tape over their mouths and they put handcuffs over their wrists, and they basically make a statement saying, hey, did you know child marriage is happening right now in your own backyard? What are you going to do about it? So her story is amazing. Her name is Frady Reese, and she's just a true hero to me. So yeah,
the fact she's making such a difference makes me very happy, because to me, I mean, I've read in-depth articles about this, and it breaks my heart.
So heartbreaking.
It's basically another type of slavery.
It is, absolutely.
It is. It's another type of modern day slavery. These poor gals have got literally no control over anything, because their parents and their families are in it. Yeah. And ganging up on them. Then you've got the husband who's basically a rapist, because the child literally can't consent. And then you've got his family all in on it as well. So this poor isolated child is enslaved, because they're not they don't get to go to college or university. They don't get to have education. They are literally baby making machines who are literally they can't even go shopping on their own. Most of these young girls
can't open bank accounts most of the time. No. They can't do any of that stuff that we
no rights whatsoever. So it is modern day slavery, and the fact that it's taken this long, and that states still aren't all
44 states in the US.
It makes my blood boil. I swear to God, if I had a special gift, it was because, to me, all these husbands of these young girls, they should all be. I'm sorry, but it makes
it's so horrible. And the thing that really gets me, it's not just the families, but it's also the legal and the justice system. So the parents are allowed to go to court, and them and the judges, by the blessing of the senators and the governor, because of the laws in place, they can talk all together on behalf of this poor young woman who's, pregnant or she's been abused. They can decide, oh yes, we'll give you an exception to get married. And that's what happens a lot of time here in the US, that these people and the systems and people in positions of power decide on behalf of a minor that yes, she can get married. And that to me blows my mind. Like, why aren't we paying attention to this more? But thankfully, Unchained at Last are doing a great job, but I'm always trying to talk about this issue, because it's happening in our backyard. It happens in the UK a lot as well. I've read a lot of stories happening there, which it's really horrible. It shouldn't be happening.
It tends to be the more traditional families and the traditional, more traditional communities. It's so embedded in their culture.
And every type of religion, I will say that, from the data that I've been reading, it is every religion, not just one particular. And I think that's important to remember.
I agree completely. I agree. As I said, it's the more traditional.
Yeah.
And it's heartbreaking, and obviously we're still getting young girls that are, like butchered down below because of tradition, and they literally spend the rest of their days in agony, just going to the bathroom. There are so many different things, and unfortunately I think there's a distinct lack of women being taken seriously, to the point, and I don't know whether you know this, Asha, this is something I found out recently, right? Women's birth control, okay, the IUDs that they put inside us to stop us getting pregnant, none of those are tested. None of them go through the testing processes that that medicines go through. There is a loophole. So medical devices don't have to go through testing like medicines because of this loophole. So if a drug company can prove that their newfangled device is similar to something that was approved back in 1950 or 1960, it gets green lighted and gets approved even when there's no testing done. The worst example was the Esure birth control. And I watched a big documentary on it, and there was these women who had all had this IUD inserted, and it had either broken up inside them on its own.
I've heard so many stories like that.
Or broken up when they tried to remove it, and the doctors weren't even trained properly on how to put it in. So there are literally so many women around the world who are literally permanently damaged internally because the people in charge don't take our health and us seriously, and that's disgusting. Because I'm damn sure if it was a birth control for men, well,
forget about it.
I know. In fact, I know, Asha, because they trialed a birth control.
That's right.
For men, and because the majority of them put on a couple of pounds, it was it didn't work.
We don't want to put them through that.
No,
but that shows the lack of value that women's bodies have in general society, and also the lack of women in those positions of power saying, hang on a minute, I've had this experience, let's start all over again. And, you know, birth control has a very, very sordid history in the United States, experimenting on black and brown women, you know, to the point where they don't care what happens to these marginalized women before they put it on the market and test it on predominantly white women. So that's a reproductive justice and reproductive rights issue right there. You know, where do these medications come from, and are they made to empower us to make the decisions in our lives and about our bodies, or is it made to make money for a pharmaceutical company? I think those questions all go back to, you know, who is this for? Who is it empowering? And, you know, goes back to that whole issue.
I just wish, Asha, that more women who hold government positions were more vocal about all these issues. But, you know, there's too many women politicians who just, they don't, you know, because that's the thing. You've got to be strong enough to take criticism on the chin. You know, if a woman raises a voice, oh, she's hysterical, you know, you've got to ignore that and be more like, you know, good old Margaret.
Focus on that bigger goal of who this is going to help.
Yeah, Margaret Thatcher, you know, yes, she made some mistakes, but she was a total badass, you know. And if she believed something was right, she didn't care what male politicians thought of her. She's like, no, sod you. This is the right way to do it. I'm going to do it. We need more women politicians and people in power to be more like that, who don't care what people think of them, because they know things have got to change and they will push on to do it. Unfortunately, I'm not politically correct enough, because I tend to say what I think. And if someone's been an arsehole, I'm going to tell them. And if I think, you know, because I don't tolerate bad behavior and stupidity. I cannot deal with that. I'm like, what are you talking about right now? You're not making no sense. Move on.
I don't know if you saw that viral video. I think it was MP Dawn Burnett, I believe her name is. She's a Labor MP in the UK, and she stood up in Parliament, I think it was a few days ago, and basically was like, hang on a minute, why does, you know, Boris Johnson get to lie about these things, you know, relating to the vaccines or coronavirus? And she got kicked out just because she was calling out the fact that there's these protocols in place. Other people get to lie, and because she's calling out the lie, she's getting kicked out. And so I've been following her on Instagram now, and she's making all these videos saying it's time for change. Like, we're being gaslit into believing these lies, and then the minute we stand up and call them out, and particularly because she's a black woman, there's that added stigma of you need to know your place. There's the angry black woman tropes. There's all these things going on, and so I think we do need to, you know, really rise up and stand up and be more vocal in our stands and calling out the injustice when we see it, because, you know, people's lives are at stake, whether it's the coronavirus, whether it's birth control, and so many other issues. I think we definitely need to see more people, you know, calling out the arseholes, like you said.
Exactly, because God knows we need to do it. One of the best things I was ever told was you cannot control what others do, but you can control how you react to it. And you can either challenge it and say, no, this is wrong, this is unfair, this is not right, or you can just not react and let things carry on and nothing will change. So kudos to you, Asha. You are an amazing lady. I will always support you and have your back, because you are amazing, and you give so many women their voices back and share their story, which then in turn helps other women who are going through this.
I hope so. I hope so.
Honestly, I promise you, you are doing more than you realize, because these things have a knock-on effect, and you help one woman's journey and give her the confidence to talk about it. and she will change another 5, another 10, another 50.
Yeah, I hope so.
100.
That's my aim anyway.
Yeah, you are amazing. Asha, I would love to have you back again in the near future.
Anytime, please let me know. I would love to get to know you more and do this again. Thank you so much, Beth. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you are so welcome, darling. And give those babies a big kiss and a cuddle from me.
I will. I will. Thank you so much. And thanks everyone for watching.
Thank you, everyone. And we will see you on the next Witty Writers Show. Bye for now.